Open your browser and search for Open Weather Map API and click on the first link. You need to create your account. If you already have an account, then sign in. If you don't have an account, please create an account. Once you are signed in, please go to your profile and say My API Keys. Once you click on the API keys, you already get a key which is created for you. If you want to create your own API key, then go over here and write any name. Suppose if I say I want to have a weather and click on generate, it will generate you and another key. Copy this entire key. API keys are nothing but, we call it as application programming interface, which is nothing but a unique identifier which will help you to get the live updates from a website to your code. So now what we are doing, we are creating a weather application where we are trying to fetch the real time weather information and next 5 days forecast. So this information we can fetch it through the website by using the API key. However, they are typically used to authenticate and authorize a project with the API key rather than a human user. Now open your Python editor. Over here, import the library called as request. Request library will help us to request the information from the server. So any information if you want to get from the server, you have to use the library called as request. So this will provide all the features where you can fetch the information from the server. Now we will create a function that is fetch weather based on the city name. So that's the reason we are taking city name as an argument over here. So now we already copied the API key from your account, that is from Open Weather Map API. That API key you have to paste it over here. Once that is done, there are two API URLs you need to have. One is to fetch the current weather. Another one is to fetch the next 5 days forecast. So write this URL. Once that is done, we need to handle the exceptions here. So that's the reason to handle these exceptions, what we'll do is we'll put the code inside try blocks. I'll create the variable that is current response. I will use the library that is request dot you are getting the information from the current API URL. Once you get that data, store the entire data into the variable that is current data, which is received using current response dot JSON. JSON is nothing but it is JavaScript object notation. It is basically used for transmitting the data in web applications. Whenever we receive the response from the server, we get a status code. The status code of HTTP is 200. It means that whatever the request you have made is success. So we need to check that whatever the information we are trying to get, did we receive it? Is it successful? For that reason, we will have a conditional statements where we will check if the current response dot the status code is equal to 200. If it is yes, then it has to fetch us the weather details. So we'll create a variable that weather description is equal to current data weather from the first index. It has to provide us the description. Let's fetch the temperature. Temperature equal to current data from the main. We will be fetching the temperature based on the city. So we will store the city inside the variable city from the current data, and we'll take the name of the city. Based on that, we'll fetch the information and store it inside the respective variables. Once that is done, you have to print this. So we'll have a print statement formatted with the details of the weather which is stored inside the respective variables. So we will say current weather in the respective city. So we'll have a city here. You can write print statements anyhow you want. Weather description. Next print statement, which tells us about the temperature. If the current response code is not 200, then we'll go to the else part and display the error message. So we'll say print failed to fetch current weather. If you want to know what is the problem, why you're not able to fetch the details, if you want to know the error code, because every error code has a value to it, right? So now if you want to know that, what we'll do is we'll ask to display the error code. We'll say current response dot status code. Now let us fetch the weather forecast for the next upcoming days. So for that forecast, we already have a URL present inside the forecast API URL. We will be utilizing that over here. So first we'll create a variable where we will be storing the response, like as we did for the current weather response. We have to do the same thing for the next upcoming forecast. We'll have forecast response. So we will utilize the request to get the data from the forecast API URL. So whatever the data you will be getting, you will store it inside the forecast data variable. Once that is done, let us do the same thing like how we did for if current status code is equal to the 200. If that's the case, let us keep on printing the data for next 5 upcoming weather forecast. So we'll say if forecast response dot status code is equal to 200, then print forecast for next 5 days. Then we'll have print forecast data. we'll create a for loop where it will display the weather forecast based on the time for next upcoming 5 days. So for that, what we'll do is we'll create a for loop for forecast in forecast data. So forecast data contains a list of weather forecast. So we'll take up that list here and we'll print one by one. Before printing one by one, let us split this data into daytime, weather description, and temperature. Once you have fetched all the data and stored it inside the respective variables, let us create a printing format. First, we will display date time, then we'll have a colon, and then we will display the weather description. Then we can have a comma, and then let us display the temperature. If it is showing the error, then go to the else part. Let us display the error with the status code. If there is some different errors, then it has to go to the except part to throw an exception. So we'll ask it to print what exception it is having. We will display the entire error in the form of string. Now we'll write a main function where we will be calling this entire function and then asking the user to enter the city name so that we can pass the parameter to fetch the details of the weather of a particular city. So if underscore name equal to main, let us ask the user input city name equal to input enter the city name. Once that is done, just call the function by passing the city name. Let us check for our output. Before checking, request is an external library which you have to import. Please go to your terminal and say pip install request. Enter the city name. Let us say Doha. It says that current weather in Doha, weather scattered clouds and 298.14 Fahrenheit. And you can see here this is for the next 5 days temperature in Doha.